Good morning and welcome to the Committee on Governmental Operations. At this time, please place all phones on vibrate or silent mode. If you want to submit testimony, send it to testimony@council.nyc.gov. Once again, that's testimony@council.nyc.gov. At any time during this hearing, do not approach the dais. Thank you for your cooperation. Chair, we are ready to begin.
Good afternoon. I'm City Council Member Sandra Ong, Chair of the Committee on Governmental Operations. At today's hearing, the committee will be conducting an oversight on voter turnout in municipal elections. Voting is the bedrock of our democracy. People have fought, even died for the right to vote, yet so many New Yorkers take this hard-won right for granted. Over the past 2 decades, turnout in municipal elections in the city has averaged only 30%. In the most recent municipal election in 2021, when the city was electing a new mayor, a new controller, and almost an all-new city council, the turnout rate for the primary was only 26.5%, which was actually the highest turnout for a municipal primary in several decades. While the turnout for the general election hit a historic low at only 23%. These numbers are truly alarming. And these broad numbers don't tell the whole story. Turnout is not even throughout the city and varies by location and demographics. In 2021, over 33% of the voters on Staten Island went to the polls for the general election, while only 17.5% of voters in the Bronx bothered to vote. And while over 37% of city voters aged 70 to 75 voted that year, only 11% of voters between the ages of 18 and 29 went to the polls. But we know that voters in the Bronx and young voters are not totally uninterested in who represents them. In 2020, over 56% of registered voters in the Bronx cast a ballot, and over 59% of young people aged 18 to 29 cast their ballot for president. We need to figure out ways to engage these groups and other low-propensity voters in local elections. The New York City Campaign Finance Board, along with the Civic Engagement Commission, are tasked with improving voter turnout. Today, we'll be hearing from both of these agencies about how we can improve turnout in municipal elections. I look forward to discussing ideas to improve participation in our local elections with our panelists. In addition, the committee will be hearing Intro 348, sponsored by Councilmember Powers, in relation to classifying credit card processing fees and bank fees as exempt expenditures. This bill will provide that credit card processing fees or bank fees paid by campaign for contributions received by the campaign would not count against the expenditure limitations under the campaign finance regulations. We also will be hearing Resolution 646, which I'm proud to sponsor, which calls for approval of a state constitutional amendment that will move municipal elections to even number years to coincide with gubernatorial elections. New York City odd years, off-cycle elections, which are mandated by state constitutions, were put in place over 125 years ago in an attempt to weaken the corrupt political machines that dominate New York City politics at the time. However, the off-year elections have the effect of depressing turnout for local races. The Campaign Finance Board have proposed moving local elections to even number years to improve voter turnout, and this resolution calls on state legislature to begin the process of amending the state constitution to municipal elections to even number years to coincide with gubernatorial elections. And with that, I want to thank CJ Murray, Erica Cohen from the central staff for their work in putting together this hearing, as well as Sworn Chief of Staff Alexander Hart and Communications Director Shane Miller for their assistance. I will now turn it over to our moderator, Committee Counsel CJ Murray, to swear in our first panel.
Thank you, Chair. Our first panel will include Betsy McLean and Kathleen Daniel. Panelists, please come up to the table now. And before we begin, I'll administer the affirmation. Please raise your right hand. Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth before this committee, and to respond honestly to council member questions? Thank you. You may begin your testimony.
Thank you, Chair Ung, members of the Committee on Governmental Operations, for holding this hearing and for the opportunity to submit testimony on the important topic of voter turnout in New York City's municipal elections. My name is Kathleen Daniel, and I'm the Chief Democracy Officer at Democracy NYC, affectionately known as DNYC. As my predecessor outlined in testimony before this committee in April of 2022, Democracy NYC was created in 2018 as a mayoral initiative, and pursuant to Mayoral Executive Order 88, is now a program of the New York City Civic Engagement Commission, affectionately known as CEC. This merger has further streamlined engagement efforts to ensure that we have maximum impact through closer coordination. The mayor recently established the city's first ever Office of Engagement, led by Betsy McLean, who is present at this hearing and at this table with me. This office oversees the CEC and works to ensure that the city coordinates community engagement efforts across agencies, systematically learns from communities to inform policy and programs, builds the capacity of all city agencies' outreach to engagement teams, and advances community-driven solutions. Among these community-driven solutions is the CEC's charter-mandated citywide participatory budgeting process, the People's Money, a program that works to provide pathways into civic engagement for New Yorkers typically left out of the democratic process. We have the pleasure of working with many council offices through this process with the goal of moving community voice into action, a goal that is shared by Democracy NYC. DNYC's mission is to foster civic engagement, increase voter access, and promote voter turnout for all New York City residents. From voter registration to the act of voting itself, we believe that participation in our democracy must be as accessible as possible. Our work is focused on utilizing grassroots organizing strategies for direct voter contact and developing communication strategies and educational materials to encourage city residents to exercise their right to vote and to do so in their own language. This week, we announced a $2 million Get Out the Vote campaign to educate New Yorkers on ranked choice voting, the rights of limited English proficiency voters, and to activate voters to turn out to the polls ahead of the June primary. This comprehensive campaign will include a grassroots direct-to-New Yorker outreach and canvassing operation, a $1.1 million targeted multilingual ethnic and community media advertising campaign, a CUNY core, democracy developers, of 100 participating students, and partnerships with community and faith-based organizations. Our $1.1 million, multi-million-dollar media campaign, it will comprise of ethnic and community media, TV, radio, and print advertising, an out-of-home campaign, which includes subway, bus shelters, and newsstand ads, digital screens in bars, restaurants, barbershops, nail salons, the NYC Ferry, Link NYC, and more. It will also comprise digital media on social media and streaming services, promotion of multilingual digital games, which help New Yorkers practice and understand how ranked choice voting works. Our direct outreach component of the campaign invests in community and faith-based organizations to conduct in-person outreach and voter education and activation, including in the 33 neighborhoods hardest hit by COVID-19. Hosting and facilitating multilingual voter education teach-ins, conducting citywide days of action, including phone banking, peer-to-peer texting, community canvassing to get out the vote for the June primary. We're developing a CUNY student corps, as I mentioned, to conduct voter outreach, voter education, and volunteer recruitment. We're collaborating with NYC Service and the Spread Love NYC campaign to build a volunteer base of New Yorkers committed to help stop the drop between voter registration and voter activation. We have language access and accessibility resources. As part of its core programming, the CEC provides language interpretation at poll sites, investing in translation of key voter education resources in multiple languages, including printed materials and public service announcements, and sharing culturally competent video advising New Yorkers of their right to vote in their own language. Language access is an integral part of the civic inclusion in New York City, where 49% of New Yorkers speak a language other than English at home, and 23% are limited English proficient. One of the CEC's mandates under the city charter is to expand access to language interpreters at poll sites throughout the city. For LEP voters, which is part of CEC's larger commitment and mission to increasing support available to LEP vote New Yorkers in the CEC's programs and services. To further meaningful access to the electoral process, the CEC has expanded poll site assistance for LEP New Yorkers and worked to increase awareness of poll site interpretation rights. To accomplish this work, the CEC established a Language Assistance Advisory Committee to provide recommendations for the development and implementation of the program. The CEC will provide these services at early voting and election day poll sites in the following languages: Arabic, Bengali, Chinese, Cantonese Mandarin, French, Creole, Italian, Korean, Polish, Russian, Urdu, and Yiddish. It is also important for us to provide highlights, examples, and context of the interagency collaboration that has supported voter engagement work in recent years. DNYC has partnered with New York City Public Schools and PEU on Civics Week and the annual Student Voter Registration Drive. We partnered with the Mayor's Office of Immigrant Affairs to provide language assistance at poll sites and ensure that materials about voting, including voter registration forms, are translated and accessible to LEP New Yorkers. We work with the Mayor's Office for People with Disabilities and the New York City Campaign Finance Board to make voter guides available in American Sign Language. These are just a few examples of the collaborative pro-voter interagency work that DNYC has prioritized over the past few years. Since 2019, PEU has been a key partner to DNYC, supporting voter registration and direct voter engagement. DNYC and PEU have partnered on student voter registration drives as part of the Civics Week, Civics for All initiative. In addition to collaborative voter registration work, DNYC and agency partners have prioritized increasing voter turnout and engagement, an extremely important task given the city's persistently low voter turnout numbers. The NYC Elections Consortium, founded by DNYC, brings together good government groups, community-based organizations, and elected officials' offices regularly to discuss and address issues related to NYC elections as they arise. The CEC and DNYC work in close coordination with the CFB, amplifying shared messages, co-branding outreach materials, and triaging civic engagement outreach efforts. DNYC is committed to building a movement to create a culture of voting in New York City. The vote is one of our sacred rights and one of the keys to building community power. We look forward to further discussing improving voter turnout and other ways we can work together with the council, city agencies, and other stakeholders. Although we're experiencing a dramatic decrease in voter participation, DNYC is committed to continuing its work with interagency coordination and collaboration with external groups, such as community-based organizations, in our campaign to stop the drop between voter registration and participation. Thank you again to Chair Ung and the committee members for your time today.
Thank you for your testimony. Before we get to questions, I'd like to turn it over to City Council Member Powers to give a statement on his bill.
Thank you, and thank you to Councilman Rong for holding this hearing today. Thank you everyone for being here to testify. And without question, a really important topic today being heard because we are in election year and we are in an odd election year when it comes to just having these city council elections. I think few New Yorkers know about, so all of us should be striving to help enhance turnout this year and make sure we have competitive elections. Want to speak just briefly about a bill I have on the agenda today, Intro 348, which I introduced in response to direct concerns I heard from candidates in previous elections, and of course all of us have been candidates at one point in time. It's true that no one likes credit card fees, I think, and that's particularly true for political campaigns that are bound to strict expenditure limits. My bill will ensure that bank fees and credit card processing fees paid for by a campaign for contributions they receive will no longer count against the expenditure limits for that campaign. It's a simple fix to a problem that may seem insignificant, but for campaigns that are on tight budgets and want to use those funds to communicate directly with voters, it certainly makes sense that that money should be spent on that. We are living, and just anecdotally, we're living in the world where I think campaigns are fueled by credit card contributions, and I want to thank the CFB, who has in recent years put up their own platform to make it easier and for compliance and for fundraising to use their system in a credit card processing system. Yet every month, every candidate here gets that Stripe fee if you use that. That goes right into your disclosure and counts against your spending limit, despite not really having spent any money. So I've heard from citywide all the way down to local candidates that they'd like to see that change and introduce a bill in response to that. Simple fix, and of course here to work with the CFB and everyone else who will be implementing that to make sure it works. Certainly does not interfere with this year's elections because we know we're underway on that already and we have a primary coming up in a few weeks, but to make sure down the road, and this may not even apply to me as a candidate, that it will make people's lives a little bit easier and have the money to spend on their actual elections, not for just a simple act of raising money. With that, I will say thank you again to the chair for hearing my bill today and having this important hearing. I'll be bouncing back and forth to the hearing next door. Thanks for giving me an opportunity to speak.
Thank you, City Council Member Powers. Great. So I just have a few questions. The Mayor Office of Engagement, currently right now, how much staff do you have?
So the Mayor's Office of Engagement is a small team. We're a team of 3 people. And then we oversee 4 city agencies, including Community Affairs Unit, the Public Engagement Unit, the Civic Engagement Commission, which includes Democracy NYC and NYC Service. So combined among all of those agencies, probably north of 300 people.
Understood. And does the Office of Engagement itself have any money for voter engagement activities?
No, we don't.
Got it. I just have a question about the announcement that was made about this Get Out the Vote investment. So there's a 1.1 million multilingual media campaign. How does that, is that separate CFB? Do you coordinate with CFB? Because they also have their own, media campaign.
Yes. So this is separate from CFB's media campaign currently, but we are in constant communication and participate in meetings in the election consortium with the CFB. And so we make sure that we are we're augmenting all of the efforts. The B of V also has an advertising campaign. And so it is our goal to ensure that it's all hands on deck, because we're experiencing this crisis in democracy. So we are aware of the other campaigns as they are becoming aware of ours. Ours is recent. It was one of the newest campaigns. And we're working in conjunction with everyone to ensure that we're reaching the widest possible number of voters in this campaign.
No, that's great. So CFB, you and BOE have its own campaigns, with the media. So how is it that to ensure that there's not multiple efforts on the same front, rather than, you said, augmentation, which is great, but how is it, is there coordination, and what type of coordination is there?
So one of the ways that we're all coordinated is that the messaging is the same as far as ranked choice voting. We're making sure that everyone has the same message on what ranked choice voting is and how to conduct ranked choice voting, because this is the second ever ranked choice voting race. And the ways in which the messages are different, they're different looks and feels, because there simply is not one way to reach every New Yorker. When you look at the Broadway production that is voting in New York City, the Board of Elections has the physical plans, they have the theater and the stagehands. The CFB has the playbill and promotes all of the actors, the participants on the stage, and pays them, finances them. And then the Civic Engagement Commission and Democracy NYC, we bring the audience. But we're facing a season where many people are no longer going to the theater. And so it's going to take all hands on deck to continue to collaborate in order to ensure that we're getting to everyone so that they know that it is an election season. Very few New Yorkers know that right now, that there's an election in 2-3 weeks, and to ensure that they're activated and get out to vote.
Understood, thank you. So let's talk about the ethnic and community media, TV, radio, and print advertising. How is that working out? Again, back to who makes that decision, how much money goes into that, and how is that separate from what CFB and what BOE is doing?
So it is, I see the campaigns, we at Democracy NYC see the campaigns as multiple layers. We're all talking about ranked choice voting, we're all telling people to get out and vote, and we at CEC are focusing greatly on the right to vote in your own language, which many New Yorkers are simply unaware of. And our campaign, when we look at our data from the census data, we're seeing that the predominant limited English proficiency languages are Chinese and Spanish in the districts, only 21 of which are having a primary race. And so we are focusing on that, and again, with different looks and feels, but all a very significant, consistent message on ranked choice voting.
Okay, so I'm just going to get down a little bit further to the more details. So speaking of that, how is that decision being made? You said, yes, you need to reach out to the Spanish and Chinese voters. So how is that being made? practically speaking, would I be seeing, if I'm opening up like there's 4 Chinese newspapers out there, would I be seeing an ad from CFB, from CEC, from BOE? So how, what's happening there?
Thank you for that question, Councilmember Ung. We are working with different advertising agencies so that we're spreading the wealth. We're communicating with the community-based organizations that we work with that are in the CEC with the tree neighborhoods, because they're telling us this is what we read. This is what we read in this community. This is, these are the vehicles that are most important to us, particularly with radio, because we're seeing that there's some differences in different neighborhoods, and this is not a citywide race. And we are taking our information from different populations, from the justice involved to the youth, as to where we should invest, because there are only 21 races, and so we're very focused on hyper-local information. As well, because there are 3 different methodologies for the campaigns, we think that that expands our reach, because different people are paying attention to different agencies. We are, again, facing a great crisis in civic trust, and there are people that will trust one agency because they communicate well with that agency, and there are people that will trust another agency.
No, I think it's great. You're reaching out to the community and to the CBOs that the community does trust to have informed decisions. So is there a list of CBOs that you all have that you're reaching out to? And if so, can you share that list of CBOs? And if there's a way, could take a look at that list, or other city council members that we could update that list too?
Absolutely.
Great, and now the second question I have is about the direct outreach, about investments in community and faith-based organizations to conduct in-person outreach, voter education, and activation. Can you walk me through how that actually works? Would it be grants be provided to these groups? Like, how does that practically work?
So we're funding, for Democracy NYC, we're funding 10 community-based organizations to conduct electoral work at $10,000 each. For the CEC has been working for several years now with what we call the TREE Coalition, the 33 neighborhoods hardest hit by COVID-19, and they have received funding to do civic engagement work that includes electoral work, and they're participating with us in getting out the vote for participatory budgeting as well. And all of these organizations tomorrow are convening where we're having a train-the-trainer boot camp on the electoral campaign, how to conduct phone banks, our text banks, our citywide days of action, and how to conduct our teach-in and build this movement of educated, savvy voters that know their rights and are excited to go to the polls.
Thank you. And you said Democracy NYC has 10 groups for $10,000 each.
Yes, in addition to the coalition work with the CC.
Right. Do you have a list of those 10 groups?
Yes, we can provide that as well.
Great. And the coalition of the 33 hardest neighborhoods, right? Do you also have a list of those groups too?
We can send that.
Great. And lastly, is there any thoughts about position whether or not local elections should be moved to even number years?
Democracy NYC is in support of anything that will expand access to voters and activate voters to come out and vote. So if we find in our research and in our work with grassroots organizations that having fewer elections will increase turnout, then we absolutely support it.
Okay, great. Thank you. And that's all the questions I have.
Thank you, Councilmember Ung.
Thank you. Our next panel will include representatives from the Campaign Finance Board. And before we begin, I'll administer the affirmation. Panelists, please raise your right hand. Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth before this committee and to respond honestly to council member questions? Great, thanks. You may begin.
Thank you, Chair Ung and members of the Governmental Operations Committee for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Ali Swadek. I'm the Director of Policy and Research at the New York City Campaign Finance Board. Joining me today is CFB Board Chair Rick Schaefer and Deputy Director of Public Affairs Amanda Melillo. The Campaign Finance Board is a nonpartisan and independent city agency that administers the city's matching funds program. Our agency strives to make our local democracy more equitable and inclusive by matching small contributions from average New Yorkers with public funds. NYC Votes, an initiative of the CFB, works alongside community organizations, volunteers, elected officials, and other city agencies to register, educate, and engage voters across the city. The CFB produces an annual report with information on the past year in voting, analyses of the electorate, recommendations to improve voter participation, and more. We call this report the Voter Analysis Report, or the VAR. The Policy and Research team spearheads the VAR's creation, but the report involves vital contributions from staff all across the agency. We appreciate the opportunity to present the staff's hard work to the committee today. A key component of our agency's mission is to make sure that the city's voters are well-informed and prepared to cast their ballots on Election Day. We conduct voter outreach and education year-round, focusing on underrepresented New York City voters. We do this by meeting voters where they are with accurate and digestible information, as well as by engaging strong partnerships with community-based organizations and elected officials. In 2022, we held 103 virtual and in-person events with over 2,000 attendees. In addition, our social media accounts and NYC Votes website continue to be invaluable resources for New Yorkers seeking election information. The voter guide is a fundamental part of our outreach and engagement efforts. In previous years, we offered voter guides in the 5 Federal Voting Rights Act languages. Thanks to recent City Council legislation, our website, the online and print voter guides, and all ranked choice voting materials will be available in 13 designated citywide languages in 2023. Distributing the voter guide and conducting direct voter engagement are not the only ways the CFB approaches voter education. The VAR, or the Voter Analysis Report, just to remind you, also allows us to make voting information and data public so voters can learn about their communities, council districts, borough, and the entire city. The On the Ballot section of the Voter Analysis Report includes a detailed examination of voter registration and turnout that are of interest to many New Yorkers. By the end of 2022, New York City had nearly 5 million active registered voters, representing a voter registration rate of 85.2%. However, roughly 1.8 million New York City voters participated in the November general election, or 38.3% of registered voters. Overall turnout for eligible voters in the June and August primaries were similar rates, but even lower than the general election, 14.5% and 14.7% respectively. These low turnout numbers are not unusual for state and federal election years and emphasize that driving turnout, the topic of this hearing, is the most important voter education objective. This VAR also contains the agency's first in-depth analysis of New York's special elections turnout. The lack of literature and available data on this subject limited our analyses. However, we concluded that turnout in special elections was higher among older voters and in boroughs that have historically high turnout already. As New Yorkers continue to participate in special elections, we hope to better understand how voters in these elections differ from primary and general voters. In this year's report, we also studied a once-in-a-decade phenomenon called redistricting and analyzed the influence of public testimony on the Commission's process. In 2022, New Yorkers submitted over 5,000 pieces of testimony to the New York City Districting Commission. Our analysis found that council districts with higher proportions of people of color submitted fewer testimonies. This issue could be one of awareness and addressed by disseminating mailers to city households and generally better notifying New Yorkers of the redistricting process and the opportunity to submit testimony. However, our overarching conclusion was that the Districting Commission incorporated much of the constructive criticism offered in New Yorkers' testimonies into their final maps. These groundbreaking findings show that community members have a real impact on decision-making when given the opportunity to voice their opinions, and highlight the importance of ensuring that all communities are represented in testimony. In addition to the analyses of the electorate, the 2022 voter analysis report includes 2 legislative recommendations. Our first recommendation is to make ballot proposals more accessible and easy to read. 1.3 million New York City voters cast a ballot in the general election, but each of the 4 ballot proposals received roughly 1.5 million votes. This gap could be reduced by making ballot proposals easier to understand. Ballot proposals can be confusing for New Yorkers of all backgrounds. To improve accessibility, the CFB recommends that legislators require all state and local proposals to be written in plain language, which is a way to present communications clearly and concisely using everyday terms that are easy to understand. This change would make ballot questions more accessible for voters with disabilities, including those with low vision, cognitive, and intellectual disabilities, and also those with limited English proficiency. For this to work, proposal drafters cannot exclusively rely on online tools to assess readability and should also engage experts and a cross-section of New Yorkers to provide feedback on the readability of the proposals. Our other recommendation is to consolidate elections to even years. As the VAR shows, there are significant disparities in New York City turnout for various elections in various years. From 2001 to the present, the average turnout for New York City mayoral elections is 29.5%. The average turnout for gubernatorial or governors and presidential elections is 35.6% and 60.8% respectively. Other cities have addressed their own turnout gaps by shifting their local elections to even years in the past decade. For example, after Baltimore aligned local elections with presidential ones, voter turnout increased from 13% to 62%. Los Angeles began voting for local races in even years in 2020, and 2 years later, mayoral election turnout nearly doubled the average of the previous 4 elections. Several legal changes are necessary to smoothly transition to even-numbered election years in New York City. Our VAR includes a flowchart of implementation options, all of which require voters to approve a state constitutional amendment. Given the complexity, this change may not happen in this decade, but that does not mean that it is not worth pursuing. We are pleased that Committee Chair Ung introduced Resolution 646, calling for a constitutional amendment to move New York City elections to even-numbered years. Moving local elections to even years has many clear and tangible benefits, and we appreciate the Chair's commitment to bettering local election turnout. The committee is also hearing Introduction 348 today. This bill, sponsored by Councilmember Keith Powers, would exempt bank and credit card processing fees from campaign spending limits. While we do not have a position on this bill, the CFB greatly appreciates the Council's continued commitment to modernizing our city's campaign finance system. To assess the impact of this legislation, we reviewed bank and credit card processing fees for all matching funds program participants in 2017 and 2021. In 2017, these 200 candidates spent almost $500,000 on bank and credit card fees, which represented just under 1.3% of all spending. About 0.87% of spending for City Council Matching Funds program participants went towards bank and credit card processing fees that year. In 2021, all program participants spent a total of $2.3 million on bank and credit card fees, representing just over 1.3% of all spending. Roughly 1.1% of City Council candidate spending went towards bank and credit card processing fees in 2021. This slight increase from 2017 to 2021 aligns with the growth in online and credit card contributions from the same time frame, which we studied in depth in our 2021 post-election report. We also evaluated the practical considerations related to implementation. Currently, this bill would go into effect 120 days after passage. As a result, these changes could impact candidates' ongoing activity in both the 2023 and 2025 election cycles. To add clarity, the legislation should specify an election cycle for which fees in that cycle and future cycles should be exempted. To implement this change, the CFB would also need to amend its rules and update CSmart, our campaign finance disclosure application, so these fees are exempted from the expenditure limit in a way that does not burden the campaigns themselves. Our staff is available to discuss and provide additional information about this bill if necessary. Our voter analysis reports serve as an annual opportunity to shed light on the incredible work of CFB staff, including the impactful voter outreach efforts, exceptional data analysis, and legislative recommendations. New Yorkers can use this information to continue the invaluable mission of supporting and improving New York City's electoral process. We are grateful that the Council continues to be an avid reader of the report. Thank you for the opportunity to testify about the VAR Resolution 646 and Introduction 348 today. We are happy to answer any questions the Council may have.
Thank you for your testimony. I would like to welcome Councilmember Hanif on Zoom and Councilmember Ressler. I'm first going to tackle the bill about exempting the credit card fees from the limitation on expenditures. So you did, it says that the legislation should specify election year for which, okay, so that's something we could definitely work on. So other than that, you need to amend the rules and update CSmart. Are those two processes, doable or not that doable?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Sure.
It's just...
So in your testimony, it says legislation to specify election cycle, which is something on our end, which I'm sure we could do. The other part is you mentioned two other things that CFB would need to do is to amend the rules and also to update CSmart. Are those two actions or processes something that is very complicated, something that's doable, or something that's going to take quite amount of time?
So we discussed internally, we do an annual review of our rules, so that wouldn't be totally unusual. But for updating CSmart, we discussed, and actually Councilmember Powers also alluded to this, that for credit card processing fees that are brought through our NYC Votes Contribute platform, there's already a way of putting those into CSmart that's fairly automatic for the campaign, as far as I understand. So we would want that to be something that would be more seamless for folks, and we would be able to automatically identify those fees as exempt, and that's just a coding change that would have to take place.
Okay, excellent. So just for example, I'm just thinking about the timeline. So for example, we clarified for 2023, would you have enough time to adjust these two, amend the rules, and also change the CSmart?
So we discussed the timeline of the bill. Just it's never our preference to change something about the program mid-election cycle, and for 2023, it's practically over already.
So okay, so that's not really practical.
Yeah. So
Understood.
if the and certainly I'm not exactly describing how you should rewrite this,
right?
But we would just want to take into consideration that folks have also already started fundraising for 2025, and just be very clear which contributions received by a certain date would qualify for the exemption, or if possible, and I'm not even sure because I myself am not a lawyer, but if there's a retroactivity component as well.
Oh, right, that's a good point, the retroactivity component. Okay, understood. Thank you for clarifying that. So in addition to the credit card processing fees and bank fees, are there similar fees that you think can be included in this bill?
So we thought about the definition of bank fee as being a little broad, perhaps, and maybe there's a public policy interest in defining that term a little more specifically. But credit card processing fees, we know that they're at the point of contribution, and so they're more easy to identify, I would say. As far as additional fees that we would recommend, no, we haven't looked at that.
Great, thank you. Well, that's all the questions I have on the bill. Does city, before I move on to my other questions, okay, great. So to the actual question about moving to election number years, I'm glad, that supported. This is something that we've been talking about a long time. So there are other large cities in the United States that has moved their local elections to even number years, including Los Angeles, Austin, Baltimore, El Paso, Phoenix. Do you know if the turnout has increased in all those jurisdictions? Has there been analysis done on what was the effect of moving it to the even number years?
So we did not do this analysis ourselves. We were inspired by an amazing report that was put out by Citizens Union, and I think they're going to speak in this same hearing a little bit later. And they crunched some numbers related to local turnout and found that in all cases turnout increased. It's important to just emphasize that it's not that the fact that there's more offices on the ballot that draw greater attention is what is increasing that turnout, and it's more so that they're just adding the local races to the existing presidential year or gubernatorial year in some cases.
Understood. So actually, speaking of that, do you have a position on whether or not it should be presidential years or gubernatorial years?
So we kept our recommendation purposefully vague. We know that the process is really complex and will take many years to accomplish. So we think it's more important to kind of elevate the issue to the public sphere and get folks to pay attention to the issue and be able to make that determination for New York State, where there's not a lot of data or studies on turnout as much as there are in other places, because we're not a swing state, we're not as influential in national races as some other states are. So there's a lack of data, I think, on that topic.
Great. Can you actually walk us through it does say if everything goes well. Can you just walk us through this actual process of how long, does it say, the state passes it goes through, the referendum and that goes well? What actually is the process?
So we included a really great flowchart in our voter analysis report that goes through the implementation options. It has a lot of arrows. I don't think I can do justice to every step, but that's for our policy analysts who did amazing work on this issue. But there are other issues to consider that I think add complexity, such as the fact that there's district attorney races that take place in completely different years because they're county races, and they don't even have, not all district attorneys are elected in the same year. They're distributed throughout 4 years. And then there's also judicial races for civil court, Supreme Court, and then judicial delegates and party races. So there is a level of coordination that would need to take place at the state that I think I can't speak on how long that time will take. And I think that since this is kind of a new topic we're bringing up, it does take a bit for these ideas to percolate and to get people on board too. So we know that passing a constitutional amendment requires passing the law in the state legislature in 2 consecutive legislative cycles. So at a minimum, you're looking at 2 to 3 years just right there with that single piece. And then if there's a component that requires action at the city level, that's another additional possible, charter or ballot proposal related to a charter amendment.
No, thank you. Thank you for bringing up all these concerns. So another question we have, which I think probably you might have spoke about it in the testimony, is about the fact that, municipal elections uses RCV, other elections do not. So in terms of that, did that, and I think this happened in 2021 when there was a city had RCV, there was elections out there that did not use RCV. Do you know, did that lead to voter confusion? And was there drop-off between the 2 ballots? Did they vote in one, did they not the other?
We didn't look specifically at whether there was a drop-off between ranked choice voting races and single choice races. But there were many different offices on the ballot in 2021. I know that there were, and I think the important thing to note for primary elections is there's a lot of unique ways to elect certain party positions. So there's choose 8, there's choose 2, choose 3. So folks are already being asked to do different things on different parts of the ballot for different offices. And there's also, I believe there are a few cities, I can't off the top of my head name them, but who use ranked choice voting and have moved to even year elections. And so they have ballots that are relatively long. Some of them have dealt with wanting to focus on those local races by bringing them to the top of the ballot. And that's one solution for making sure that there's a separation between certain types of ways of voting on a ballot, if that makes sense.
No, yeah, thank you. So I know you have so much on your plate, but does CFB have more thoughts about that part of it, about making it less confusing when there are more than just, the municipal elections of RCV, when it does coincide with other races?
We did not address that in the report. I think that what we've been seeing is longer ballots, and it does seem like something that folks are getting a little bit more used to. Flipping the ballot and that sort of thing has become more of a commonplace understanding for how to vote. And with the introduction of ranked choice voting, folks, I think, really emphasized reading directions and making sure that in certain parts of the ballot you're marking it correctly. We had a very low rate of ballot errors in 2021 with ranked choice voting and the single choice elections on those ballots. So I'm hopeful that those low rates would continue.
Thank you. And now I'm going to move on past the resolution, a little bit more about voter turnout in general. So I know CFB engages in activities to improve voter turnout, including advertising of the campaigns, distribution of the voter guide, putting on candidate debates. So do we know how would you rate how effective these programs have been?
I will step in to answer that. Thank you, Chair Ung. What I would say is, first of all, it's very difficult to separate out how effective any one program actually is, because there are just so many factors that go into whether or not voters turn out to vote. So some of those factors are systemic, as you noted. We had ranked choice voting and a more generous matching funds rate in the 2021 election. That arguably drew more voters to the polls, and that was a structural change. Then there is the work that is done by just raising general awareness and doing that person-to-person community outreach paired along with that. So one of the things that we are starting to take a look at is to do more program evaluation of our work. And for example, we worked with our media buyers in the November election to determine if people who saw our ads were more likely to turn out than people who didn't. And we actually did find there was a small turnout lift. I say small, but it was actually relatively large in relation to what most GeoTV field experimentation looks like. If you look at the research, a lot of times people are looking at different contact methods, and a lot of work goes into creating those contact methods that may only raise turnout 1% or less, and that's considered a successful intervention. We know that our advertising campaign last November raised turnout by 1.3% across the board, but actually 2.3% among voters under 30, which is one of our priority audiences. So that, to us, is the beginning of research that we're always continually building on to determine what was really effective. And I would also just add that there are a couple of different ways of determining whether something was effective. There are ways you can just do research on the data. Were people more likely to turn out or not? There are also some qualitative ways of looking at it. Did people feel like they were more comfortable voting on their ballot? Did they understand more about the candidates and the races that they were voting in? Did they feel like they received good and culturally competent information in the language or medium that they wanted to receive that information in? So we're always sort of pairing our look at whether something was effective from a data perspective with also gathering that community feedback.
Thank you. So speaking of what you were just saying, so there are different programs or ways to try to increase voter turnout, including early voting, pre-registration of 16 and 17-year-old, expansions of absentee voting. Do we know how well those programs been working out?
I would say that's something we're still continuing to look at. A lot of these are relatively new in New York City. We tend to be a little more cautious when we definitively declare whether something helped or not and wait for a few election cycles before saying yes or no. I will say for national level research that's been done, it's usually been determined that pairing multiple reforms together is what increases turnout. So for example, in other places, early voting alone might not have increased turnout. It really just shifts the number of voters who are voting over more days. But if you pair it with reforms such as same-day registration, that's when you tend to see a turnout bump. So I think you see turnout bumps when generally the barriers are lowered and the system is made to be more voter-friendly. I also want to note that the state's, a number of voting reforms just went into effect. So the state's automatic voter registration system went into effect. Online voter registration went into effect for people who do not have DMV ID numbers. So these are other ways that in places that have instituted these, it's been shown to also be able to raise turnout because you're essentially lowering the barriers for people to even get into the electoral process.
Thank you. I'm certainly looking forward to see how those programs have worked out. Someone who doesn't have a DMV license, I appreciate the online one without the DMV license. No, I couldn't. No, I really had to do it by paper. I did it way back when. Oh, that's it.
When I first moved to New York, I also had to use paper. And speaking as a millennial, I was like, "What? Why do I have to do this?"
No, I mean also just for seniors, right? When I think of
Yes.
through a lot of seniors, who like newer immigrants to the country, they might not have that DMV license, but they might want to register to vote. It would be hard to do that online. So this is something I went through. So
Now all you need is a social security number, and it makes it much easier. For
which
New
is
York
exactly
voters.
like the paper ballot,
Yes.
which is So I believe Councilmember Ressler has a few questions.
It's good to see you all. Thank you for your work. I know CFB does a lot of really great things for the city of New York, and you guys are in many, many, many ways a model for the nation, so appreciate you all. How does New York City turnout compare to other large cities around the country?
I'm going to take this one and maybe turn to Allie if she has anything to add. What I would say is that our turnout in local elections can be compared to turnout in other places where it's roughly the same. And where we're seeing those changes is where they realign their elections with even years as opposed to having them off cycle like we do in New York City. So in a lot of other big cities, you still see about 25% turnout in mayoral elections. But as these cities are starting to shift to align with governor elections or presidential elections, that turnout is starting to change.
Do you think that aligning our municipal elections with state elections is the most consequential thing we can do to increase turnout?
My personal opinion right now is yes. Allie, what would you say?
Yeah, I'm interested in each of your personal opinions.
Yeah, I think it is by far the most consequential thing we can do. And one should point out one other thing. When elections are held in even-numbered years, you not only get a higher turnout, but you get a somewhat different demographic. And it's an improved demographic in that in odd numbers years, a disproportionate share of the electorate is older and is white. And in the cities that have shifted to even-numbered years, you get a larger turnout among people of color and among the young. And I think that's an important benefit as well as the higher turnout overall.
I think that moving to even year elections is definitely the way to get the most bang for your buck as far as turnout is concerned. And if we are recognizing that turnout is and making the electorate more representative of the population is our ultimate goal, then as Amanda and Rick have said, yes, I think it is the best one.
I think we've all been disappointed by lackluster turnout in New York City local elections and voting in New York in general. Since the Democrats took control of the state Senate a few years ago, we've seen a number of critical voter access reforms that I think are really helpful and beneficial. In addition to changing municipal elections to even years, which would, in a best case scenario, happen, I guess, in 2020, if it were to move forward. I don't know, 2027, 29, 2029 maybe would be the next, with two different legislatures and then a referendum. So maybe at some point in the future. What are the next most impactful reforms that you would recommend that we prioritize, either at the local level or state level, to expand voter participation?
I would say voting by mail and making voting by mail more expansive. In states that have implemented that as a reform, they do see turnout boosts because you are literally removing the need for people to leave their homes. I would also note that a lot of people talk about online voting as the next frontier. However, I think there's still significant security concerns with that would need to be resolved before looking at that seriously as a reform. But I think a number of states are shifting to voting by mail. They are seeing turnout increases as a result of that. However, there are some other considerations to have. I think we saw a number of issues with the U.S. Post Office, particularly with federal underfunding that happened in the 2020 election. So that would be an ongoing issue to monitor if the state were to seriously consider that as a reform.
Great. And
I would just add really quickly that the states that show the greatest turnout increases for mail-in voting are the ones that automatically send, and you can opt into receiving the ballot in the mail, and those places like Colorado, Washington, California, there is a significant cost to that, and that's just a consideration that we should always be making. And there's trade-offs as well. It means that in those places there are fewer in-person voting sites that are open. What does that mean in a city like New York, where it's highly walkable and we're not driving to our poll sites? Things like that I think make us a little unique when it comes to considerations like that.
Yeah, great.
The next low-hanging fruit, it would be same-day registration.
Right. And for the first time in the history of our city, in 10 days, somebody will be able, on that one day, to register to vote and vote. June 17th. That will be a very special day for somebody in New York City.
We really should find those people and
celebrate them.
Yes,
yeah,
exactly.
In the 6 districts where we have competitive city council elections, somebody is going to register to vote and vote that day, and it will be joyous. Thank you very much, Chair Ung. Appreciate your leadership. And I just want to say, both on Chair Ung's resolution and on Councilmember Powers' bill, I'm strongly supportive. And just on that, operationally, you noted in your testimony that there would be meaningful operational implications to the bill, tangible impact on CFB operations and campaigns, but you do believe you could confidently implement it. Thank you.
Thank you. And I just have a few more questions since I have you all here. So for the 2021 election, there was an earmark of 10% of the budget for advertising in languages other than English. Do you think this was efficient use of funds? Do you think there should be more funds, more budget to the advertising in languages other than English? Do you plan to use the same, percentage in 2023? Decrease, increase? What's the plan?
So we've actually significantly, we've allocated significantly more of our ad spend to in-language media than just 10%. We even exceeded 10% in 2021. But last year, for example, when we were still only translating into the 4 Voting Rights Act languages, in our August advertising campaign, 44% of our advertising was in language, and we increased that in November to 48.5%. So this time around, I will say, determining where we're going to be advertising and in what languages was a bit of a moving target up until the last moment as races were coming on and off the ballot. So up front, we're committing over 33% of our ad spend to in-language media, and we're expanding to additional languages for our ads for the first time ever in this election. So I believe right now we're advertising in 8 languages after looking at where the council districts are that are having primaries and overlapping that with census data for where each language is spoken. But I would say that we will not have final numbers ready to produce for you until after the primary, because a lot of our spend is dynamic throughout the election. We are continually reallocating our spend to different platforms after we determine what's effective, who needs more of it, things like that. So it's likely that we will end up with more than 33% of our total spend in language.
Thank you. And I wanted to just ask the same question that I asked of the mayor's office engagement. How do you make that determination of, like, where, I mean, you did say it's where actually there are elections, right, that's going on, and what's the makeup of, you know, that, the demographic makeup of those elections? Is that the main criteria, pretty much?
So I will say this election was a little bit different than other elections, and part of that was because there is no top of the ticket race. So we were really looking at a much more localized media plan than what you tend to see in every election. So we might, in a different election, rely more heavily on TV or broadcast media that just didn't feel very effective this time around because we were leading with a ranked choice voting message. And the reality is, like, half the city is not going to have a ranked choice voting primary. So this time around, we literally had a map up of looking at community districts and language data, looking at where there were active council races, and then overlapping that with zip codes because that's what media buyers work in. In a different election, we would look at a citywide spend, and we would allocate more of our money to what we determined as priority areas. The areas that we know consistently have lower turnout, and we would allocate more of our resources to being in-language media or being digital media to make sure that we're reaching voters under 30 because they tend to get their ads digitally. So there are a number of considerations that we have, and we always start by considering what are the conditions of the election and who are we trying to reach and who has a race where we're trying to get the word out. This election was just a really, really unusual one and is not how we usually make our media plan.
No, understood. Thank you. And lastly, you know, for the 2021 election, I mean, the general election obviously had one of the lowest turnouts. You know, can you, but then we have one of the most representative and diverse city council in history. So can you explain just, you know, how this happened? Like, what are your thoughts about that?
I have many, and I'll say some, and I'm sure Allie will jump in with more, and possibly Rick. But what I would say is that in 2021, a lot of the races were actually determined in the primary, where they had less competitive general elections. So I think that there were two changes that happened in the 2021 election that were incredibly important to the outcome. One of those changes was ranked choice voting. I think a lot of people decided to jump into the mix and run for office who might not have decided to run for office otherwise because they saw a more viable path to victory. So I think you saw just a different mix of candidates. Even at the mayoral level, I felt like there was a much different mix than there had been in previous elections. Then we had a more generous matching funds program that allowed people to run for office entirely using public funds and small contributions. So that really ensured that you had a different mix of candidates coming in the door. And then we did see higher turnout in the primary where races felt more competitive. Because that sense of competition, I think, is an important driver of turnout at the local level. So I think there were a lot of conditions, like I think we had good outcomes in terms of who ran for office and who won office. And now we want to make sure we're having those same outcomes for who's coming out to vote.
Great, thank you. I'm done with all my questions, but I see Councilmember Powers here, so I'm sure he has a few questions.
Thank you. Nice to see everyone. I'm sorry I missed your testimony, although I do have a copy of it in front of me as well. I just wanted to ask a couple quick questions on my legislation, but I'll just say, I just want to ask just clarity. You guys are in support of legislation, opposed to it? What's the position of the CFB on the bill?
We do not have a position on the legislation, but we respect that the committee is seeking to, always modernize the city's matching funds program, and our post-election report recognized that there's been a huge, massive increase in credit cards as the voting method as the contribution method of choice. So we understand how that's an evolving trend.
Got it. And I recognize your concerns about 120 days after passage, and I think for many of us being mid-cycle would have to make sure we don't impact existing elections. Are there any like logistical issues that need to take place, whether it's in CSmart or in your rules or anything else, if we were to pass that legislation?
Yeah, we are going to review our rules and make sure that references to fees and exempt expenditures is just clarifying what types of fees we mean when we say credit card and bank fees, and we can speak about that too. And if there's specifications in the legislation, that's fine also. And as a avid NYC Votes Contribute user, you know that the credit card fees that are incurred through fundraising through that platform automatically gets uploaded into CSmart. We'd want to make sure that we make it as easy as possible for campaigns, make sure that something like would automatically flag those fees as exempt, something like that, more of a software programming change. And
do you feel, bless you, do you feel confident that if we give the right amount of time, you can do that?
Yes, and we are currently looking into how long that would take, but I unfortunately don't have the answer for you right now.
Okay, appreciate that. I wanted to bring up just one other thing. First of all, you guys probably don't hear us from elected officials that often, but I have deep recognition of how tough your jobs can be and how what's that? Oh, he was nice. You should feel very thankful. You guys have a lot of challenges, and you do them in a crunch time, and it's not easy, and it impacts people's lives in a tough way. So there's always a lot of strong opinions about it, and you do more right than you do wrong. So let me just be on the record about that. That's a compliment, not a criticism. Let me be clear. There have been some issues recently when it comes to technology and using your technology, particularly around campaign filings. I've heard from I'm saying this on behalf of a lot of colleagues, technological difficulties, systems being down right at critical moments where people have to do things. Whether you want to believe it or not, those last few days are when everybody's tying up the loose ends for their filing and making sure that they create documentation and they can merge names, they can do all the other stuff. And it puts a big strain on folks when they lose an afternoon. In some cases, when it's around, there was a Jewish holiday last time recently. Can you just give us an update on that, and also any considerations you might give in the future to campaigns? I was actually fine, but for those of my colleagues who may have a religious need that might, or anything else that might leave them, even for us as council members, the day it happened was in the middle of a stated meeting when we are all very, very busy. So if there will be any extra considerations, or just talk us through what happened recently with the technology stuff and what might we expect in the future when something like that happens.
So we acknowledge that we've had some issues with our online resources over the past few months. I think I stated that publicly, actually, in our last public hearing. And of course, we appreciate the patience of elected officials and candidates in those situations, and we applaud our staff for helping to navigate those issues in a timely manner. We've got some real technological challenges ahead of us. I think that's one of the key priorities within the agency, and it's reflected in our budget. We simply have to update our technology, and we have plans to do so. In the meantime, while glitches continue to happen, we will continue to be as responsive as we possibly can. Where appropriate, we make adjustments to the scheduling so people have an extra day or two, and we are absolutely mindful of religious holidays and religious observance as part of our consideration in thinking about, do we need to give an extra day or two for the filings. We hope to reduce the number of occasions when that occurs. Is pretty much as soon as this primary is over, we have a plan to begin updating some of our systems during the relative quiet period of the summer. And that is a multi-year project, not only in terms of updating the hardware, if you will, but also in bringing on some new software programs. So we're very much committed to that, and we will remain as responsive as we possibly can.
So two things I wanted to ask about. And I know this is not all on turnout. It's actually very much more specific than that, but where we are candidates and how we run our elections matters. One is on the issue of, you might need some statutory flexibility. I'm not sure if you want to ever extend like a day, but for candidates I talked to who lost a day, basically, of being able to access be able to do a filing, like it would behoove us to all think about giving people some more time, after the, when going to allow for, I think it was right before Memorial Day, so like maybe through the weekend to accommodate that. I think it's very reasonable. But the other question I had was, you ask for filings at 5 p.m. on the day they're due. And I've heard from candidates something, which is why not give us till midnight? And that's statutorily allowed. And in fact, when we're not past the days where I have to drop off my bank statements to your headquarters like I think I used to have to do. In fact, we're all online now. And I think it would be the easiest fix in the world to allow candidates to comply and meet their compliance deadlines, especially in that period of time. Why don't we allow people to, why don't you take the full day on the day it's due to allow people to file?
One answer to that is that some of the cycles require us to do a 4-day turnaround. And so during the 4-day turnaround, every hour that we extend the filing deadline is an hour less that we have to do the 4-day turnaround. So that doesn't answer the question completely, because not all of the payment periods involve a 4-day turnaround. But certainly during the 4-day turnaround period, that's an issue. But that's all I can think of at the moment.
That would only suppose that at 6 p.m. you're starting the process of that, which I'm not sure it's happening. But it's a recommendation.
Yeah, I believe that it's in the best interest of the candidate to also ensure that their CSU liaisons there if they encounter an issue while they're submitting, and that is a highly, highly recommended deadline for that reason, just to make sure that we're giving the customer service that's necessary if there's an issue for a candidate.
And I'm going to ask one last question, and then I'm going to hand it back. It's still on it's less technical and more on the general campaign finance laws. I had a bill last term that actually would drop the qualifying amount of a contribution from $10 to $5 to just make those $5 donations count towards your thing. It doesn't seem to make any sense why it'd be 10. I took a recommendation of yours from one of your report to require the citywide candidates have to get 50 contributions from every borough in order to qualify. I've heard mixed reviews of that one from my colleagues who, have had to go through that system about adding an extra layer of compliance. I actually did a report on it too, actually, demonstrating past cycles. It's called 50 Ways to Love Your Borough, I think was the name of it. A Paul Simon reference. And so I wanted to just hear, your kind of current thoughts on other ways to adjust the thresholds to maybe make it easier. In that case, it would make it harder, but add something else in terms of what you might need to qualify for. But I just wanted to hear any thoughts on those ideas or other recommendations you have in terms of making it easier to qualify.
We are actually hugely in favor of the bill that you've previously introduced to reduce the qualifying contribution from $10 to $5. As you noted, I believe that was in our 2017 or 2013 post-election report. As far as other ideas, I kind of famously say about the massive amount of changes that we saw in 2021, that we kind of would like a couple more election cycles to study the impact of those changes before making any additional changes to things like threshold, because there were so many candidates who qualified and received public funds in 2021, which is great news. That's exactly how the program was designed to work. We studied whether there was a difference between first-time candidates and those who had been running in the program for a while and had received payments already. There was no difference in compliance or between either of those groups, like the way they were treated, how they were able to fundraise. So the program is working pretty close to how we would like to see it work. And we plan on approaching, I think, a more holistic study of what other changes could take place, hopefully after the 2025 election cycle, when there's another mayor's race, citywide race under our belts. I don't know if anyone else has any other ideas.
All right. Thank you. I'm going to have to run back to my other hearing, but thank you guys for taking time. Thank you to the chair. Thanks.
Thank you all for your testimony today.
Thank you, Chair and panelists. We'll now turn to public testimony. Our first panelist will be Ben Weinberg from Citizens Union. After that, we'll be turning to two Zoom panelists. First, Zoltan Hajnal, followed by Sarah Goff. But before that, we'll hear from Ben Weinberg.
Good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is Ben Weinberg, and I'm the Director of Public Policy at Citizens Union. We appreciate the opportunity to discuss the issue of voter turnout in our municipal election, and we thank Chair Ong for holding a public hearing on this issue specifically because it deserves, we believe, a separate discussion and different solutions than the kind of common conversations about turnout. I've submitted a longer written testimony and a report, but I'll make a few brief remarks. Significant improvements to our elections in recent years have created a more open and fair electoral system in which it is easier to register to vote, and to run for office. But voter turnout in elections for city offices has consistently declined with each cycle, regardless of the type of the race, whether it's an open seat for mayor, whether the mayor is up for re-election, or the number of candidates. Now, this poses a real challenge to the democratic legitimacy of our local government in the long run. And this problem is worsened by the uneven nature of turnout across the city. Citizens Union believe that New York needs to take transformative action to engage more people in our local elections, and we therefore support Resolution 646, which proposes moving New York City's elections from even-numbered years to odd-numbered years. Our own research shows that aligning our local elections with presidential or gubernatorial elections would significantly increase voter turnout overall in city elections, both for the top of the ticket, like mayor or citywide offices, and for down-ballot races, like city council offices. We find that it would benefit younger voters and communities of color who are better represented in high turnout, even-year electorates. The fact is that our odd-numbered year off-cycle electorates are smaller, older, wealthier, and also wider than the city's population. And our even-year electorates are not that much. Now, cities that hold their local elections in conjunction with higher offices do not suffer the same voter turnout problem. We mentioned before the cities that have made that change, but there are cities that have had local elections in even-numbered years for years and years and years. And average turnout, we compare the 6 largest cities that hold their local election in even-numbered year. Average mayoral turnout there ranges from 50 to 75%, and these are rates we can kind of only dream of in New York City. While the 6 largest odd-numbered year cities have mayoral turnouts ranging from 10% to 38%, quite a difference. And even-year elections in the city also yield higher turnouts for down-ballot races. So assembly races, although they are often much less competitive than council races, assembly races that are held in even-numbered years see higher turnout than council races held in odd-numbered year. Sometimes it's double or more turnout. Consolidating elections in even-numbered years would also narrow participation gaps. Turnout is expected to increase overall, as we mentioned, but our research shows that the sharpest increase in turnout would be in minority-majority districts. And the shift would particularly impact young voters. In fact, turnout for 18 to 29-year-olds in even years is 3 to 5-fold that in odd-year elections. Moving the election year also brings additional benefits, including reducing costs and supporting election officials, giving them some time off to prepare for the next year. Polls show that this policy is popular among people of all partisan background, and every time it was before the voters as a ballot initiative, it was approved. It has never been rejected. Citizens Union strongly supports Resolution 646, but we offer one suggestion. The resolution calls for city election to coincide with gubernatorial elections. Now, the data shows that the benefits associated with raising turnout and diversifying the electorate are strongest in presidential year, and most cities that have changed their local elections aligned it with presidential elections, though not all of them. However, we acknowledge that there are other considerations related to the types of elections on the ballot. We recommend replacing the constitutional requirements for odd-numbered year elections with the words even-numbered to allow for more flexibility, or alternatively, just to remove that constitutional requirement altogether, leaving it to the legislature to set the dates of municipal elections or giving that power to local governments. Thank you for allowing us to address you today, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Ben, and thank you for Citizens Union on your work on this topic. So you do make a recommendation to coincide with the gubernatorial years and not the presidential years.
No, I'm sorry if I
I'm sorry, the other
misexplained.
way. I'm sorry. It's the resolution says right.
Right.
Can you go a little bit more into that, into why that that works out better? That does increase the voter turnout.
So the data that we see from other cities and from New York City is that the turnout in presidential years is significantly higher. And the question of kind of who the communities that benefit from those turnout gains, we see much stronger gains in presidential years than in gubernatorial years. Most other cities have also moved their elections to presidential years. Not all of them. For example, Los Angeles, who just had their first on-cycle election, had it in their gubernatorial year. But we did not take a position on whether this should be in gubernatorial or presidential. We know there are a lot of considerations at play. So we wanted to highlight the negative impact of the current system. And we think there are various ways to go about it. As I mentioned, changing the words odd with even in the Constitution, or just striking that provision altogether.
Thank you. And just, you know what, since we were just having a conversation about, all that needs to be done for this to become a reality, so, in terms of, talking about having those municipal elections, having the judges' elections, having the municipal elections, do you have any opinions about how to do this in a way that's most effective going forward?
That's a good question. Our focus was on elections to city government in New York City because our group has been working in New York City for over 100 years, because that is where we see the drop-off in turnout every cycle. It stands to reason that we would eventually have to move all elections off the off year and put them all together in even numbered year elections. In terms of how to go about it, some of these changes can be done through state law. District attorneys, for example, that is governed by state law. Others will have to go through a constitutional change. It's a long process, as you note. We had, but we just implemented a statewide public campaign finance program. We have early voting, which is something people have pushed for decades and decades. So it's an ambitious goal, but we need ambitious goals to prevent further drop-off in turnout in New York City.
Thank you. I know, small steps. Small steps in a very good goal. Just one last question. I know there's a lot of concerns about overshadowing of local elections in even years. Is that a significant issue? And can you talk a little bit more about your findings? Sure.
Yes. Thank you. It's a great question. So I think there are two ways to look at it. Overshadowing in terms of media coverage, and overshadowing in terms of kind of the public's knowledge or how informed voters are. It's hard. First of all, it's hard to measure. It's hard to measure voters' knowledge and familiarity. Although there has been a couple of studies out in California that checked voters' knowledge of school board elections, so very kind of the most esoteric down the ballot elections, and found that there hasn't been a significant change after they shifted school boards election to even numbered years. And I think even today, what we see is that we do hold high-profile races like the U.S. president at the same day that we hold very, very local elections like assembly or judges. I think what we see is that the more media attention is given to politics in general, to the fact there is an election, the more people get involved. I always like to give the example of the 2018 election. So the national conversation around that election was who will control the House after Trump won. That drove all of the attention. But it translated into a different dynamic at the local level in New York City and New York State, which was around the Senate races of the IDC. I think a national conversation about politics pulled people to be mobilized around their local elections, and I think that is most likely what will happen in this case.
No, thank you. That's a good point. And I'm done with my questions. And really, I do have to thank you and Citizens Union for your work on this issue. It's really, I'm really, really appreciative of our conversations, also of this report. So thank you again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll now be turning to our Zoom panelists. First, we'll be hearing from Zoltan Hajnal, followed by Sarah Goff. Zoltan Hajnal, you may begin when the sergeant calls time.
Starting time.
Thank you very much, and thank you for allowing me to testify here. My name is Zoltan Hajnal. I'm a professor of political science at the University of California, San Diego. Many, many moons ago, I received my PhD at the University of Chicago and have been essentially working on research on local elections ever since. My work on the topic has been published in the New York Times, the Los Angeles Times, and in most of the top academic journals. As such, I'm probably the world's leading expert on this particular topic. So I want to spend a few minutes talking about what I and others have found in our research. None of my testimony will really be about New York per se, but I think it will nevertheless be very relevant to you and to making your decision here. So I want to sort of highlight 5 key findings from the research. So finding number 1, and probably the most important finding for your interest here, that finding is that moving local elections to the same date as statewide elections essentially doubles voter turnout. Every published study looking at this has found essentially the same thing about more than a dozen studies. So we know this has a huge impact on turnout. So that's number 1. Number 2, even year elections, as Citizens Union suggested, make the voting population look more like the city population. So we not only bring out more voters, but we bring out a more representative set of voters. Importantly, it dramatically increases the share of voters who are under 30. It dramatically increases the share of voters who are from communities of color. Finding number 3, even year elections make policy more responsive to the broader public. So by bringing out more voters, a greater array of voters, we help to ensure that local government is more responsive to the citizens as a whole. And we have a number of different studies showing that, which I'm happy to talk about. Finding number 4, voters love this move to on-cycle elections. And it's not just popular, but it's also nonpartisan. So 2/3 of Americans in surveys indicate that they would prefer to vote in one election at one time in one location rather than multiple days, multiple times, multiple locations. So unlike most other conceivable reforms, this is something that almost no one will oppose and almost everyone will favor. And again, it's also a nonpartisan issue. So in the same surveys, majorities of Democrats, majorities of Republicans, and majorities of nonpartisans all favor the move to on-cycle elections. So finally, just want to highlight one important fact, not necessarily a finding, but that is, this is not a new or untested phenomenon. As others have mentioned, about 1/3 of cities around the country have had on-cycle elections. Most of the cities in California, in Arizona, and Nevada have more recently moved to on-cycle elections. And in those cases, it appears to work without any major issues. So city clerk surveys reveal no major issues. Voters have the same level of information about local elections, as far as we can tell, as they did before the move to on-cycle elections. So this is very much a democratic move that you can do today. It makes life easier for your constituents. It also saves cities and the state money. And the research suggests that it is extraordinarily helpful. So thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
I do not have any questions, but we've been joined here by City Council Member Brewer.
Thank you. We'll now turn to our next panelist. Sarah Goff, you may begin upon the sergeant's announcement.
Starting time.
Good afternoon. I apologize. I have a hoarse throat from the air quality, so if you have any trouble hearing me, I do apologize in advance. I'm the Deputy Director of Common Cause New York. I would like to thank Chair Ung for convening today's committee hearing. As many of you know, Common Cause New York is a nonpartisan citizens lobby and a leading force in the battle for honest and accountable government for over 50 years. Simply put, if improving voter turnout in any election cycle was simple, straightforward, or the product of one or two reforms, there would be no need for this hearing. However, improving voter turnout in any election cycle is elusive at best. This is in part due to the dynamic circumstances and factors typically at play in any given election cycle. Sometimes these factors are well beyond the control of policy solutions, like competitiveness of races or the weather on election day. Other times there are common sense reforms that improve the ease and accessibility of voters, like giving voters more time and more ways to vote. We have the longstanding position that voting reforms and various policy solutions should be enacted regardless of whether or not they boost turnout, as turnout should not be the sole metric of efficacy or success. That being said, we wholeheartedly support Resolution 646 and will cite our colleagues at Citizens Union for their excellent research that demonstrates both the need and value of moving our election cycles to even-numbered years. In addition, we would also like to echo the recommendations of the Campaign Finance Board to expand same-day voter registration to all days of early voting and on election days in the upcoming years, as well as creating a comprehensive statewide vote-by-mail program that would dramatically increase the options voters have in the ways they can choose to vote. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you very much for your time.
No, thank you for your testimony.
And that concludes our public testimony for today, so I'll turn it back to our chair to close this out.
I want to thank everybody for coming here and having a very fruitful conversation about what we can do to move forward with this very important goal of turning out our voters and making sure we can continue to turn out our voters. So again, I want to thank everybody who participated in today's hearing. Thank you.